Welcome. We would like to introduce you to our presentation about the dark side of employment. The main aim of the video is to develop a clear understanding of the dark side of employment and what are the challenges of international companies, as well as the international human resources management. The main objectives are to present a clear and critical analysis to support the topic of our presentation. The group consists of 4 individuals, including Katerina Alexandrova, Rahwa Yemena, Ang Chow, and Paul Bielicha. We aim to focus on 3 aspects related to dark side of employment, including human rights, modern-day slavery, and underpaid labor. What are human rights? It is a difficult question for many.
Geez, that's a good question.
Human rights. Oh, that's a tough one.
Wow.
Права человека.
I don't even know how to give that a definition.
I would probably have to do a little bit of homework or something. Any right?
According to the United Nations, human rights are rights inherent to all human beings, whatever their nationality, place of residence, ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. People are all equal, entitled to human rights without discrimination. These rights are all universal, interrelated, and interdependent.
It is critical for international human resource management to promote and protect both individual and collective human rights, according to Smith in 2007. Another government body dealing with the international human rights is the International Labour Organization. This organization is motivated by the factors like abusing of working conditions, little regulations on exploiting vulnerable groups, and undercutting business costs. The ILO imposes an obligation for security and maintenance of fair and humane condition of labor of men and women and children. The main role of ILO is to prevent ignoring and guidelines, exploiting workers and undercutting costs.
Globally, modern slavery for hoteliers, it is an issue they need to be aware of. In more than 50 countries worldwide, there is an extreme risk that companies may inadvertently be conflict in forced labor. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime 2012 Global Report on Trafficking in Persons states that human trafficking can impact a hotel in a variety of ways. Use of a hotel for the sexual exploitation of adults and children, staff, and in particular those recruited or subcontracted via unscrupulous agencies being victims of forced labor or bonded labor. Products and services supplied to the hotel being produced by forced or bonded labor, labor exploitation, and unethical labor practices. There is no evidence to suggest that either large chains or small independent hotels are more at risk. The risk is higher in properties where there is subcontracted staff, hiring or migrant workers, lack of policy and enforcement, and lack of awareness in staff. There were few mechanisms within this model which provided protection to these workers. The official government inspection agency, EASI, has only 9 inspectors covering the whole of the UK. As an example, the Qatar's hotel construction industry, it's rife with abuse of migrant workers who are treated like cattle. Amnesty International has claimed, as it's called on FIFA, to help with the situation ahead of the 2022 World Cup. Non-payment of wages, dangerous working conditions, and shocking standards of accommodations. Dozens of construction workers were prevented from leaving the country for many months by their employers, and many workers subjected to forced labor.
On the other hand, the labor condition could be different depending on the local and international level. It is sometimes depend on the country, whether or not the host country have implemented the law and regulation to protect their employees. For example, in the UK, most of the MNC multinational companies employees are protected by their unions organizations. For example, in 2009, British Airways announced that they would be reducing the number of cabin crew on their long-haul flight, or would have put on the paid freeze period. At that time, the labor union steps in and called for the strike, which resulted in BA losing millions of pounds due to the grounding of the flight. Even in the Europe, the development of the countries are not the same comparing in the West and the East. Most of the eastern part of the European Union is still developing stage. Therefore, it is more likely not to have appropriate legislation in place to protect their employees. Depending on the countries and development, the needs and the wants or the other wants, the motivation of the employees are very different. In developing countries, due to the lack of knowledge, and the employees might not be able to identify the unfairness or the unfairing in their labor condition. On the other hand, migrant labor may be problematic. If it is perceived that the government are allowing migrants to take jobs which local could do, especially when there is a high unemployment rate, migrant labor can also push down wages, as migrants are often willing to work for lower wages, as the cost and the living of their own countries are very lower compared to the Western world. Regarding to underpaid labor, it is an ongoing debate that the women are getting paid less than the men within hospitality and tourism industry. A key structural concern with gender disparity in hotel catering and tourism industry is that the significant horizontal and vertical gender segregation of the labor market within the sector. As we will demonstrate vertically, and the typical gender pyramid is prevalent at lower levels and occupations with few career development opportunities being dominated by women and key managerial positions being dominated by men. Statistics shows that women occupy more jobs in the hotel and tourism sector than the men and yet earn less. This is due to the significant segregation horizontally and vertically in terms of occupation, as well as in terms of working time, part-time employment, and the gender equality at the working place emphasis that vertical segregation, work-family balance, and the care responsibilities assumed by women are more primary and interlinked factors leading to the situation. This is also stated according to the United Nations Women Fact and Figure in 2013 that women perform 66% of the world's work and produce 50% of the food, but earn 10% of the income and own 1% of the property. However, there is the evidence of increasing participation by women in the formal economy of more developed countries.
To conclude, as a group, we would like to recommend the multinational companies to ensure the followings. Firstly, the breaking of human rights by companies as a result of difference between government and the international law systems. Reacting forums on international levels for multinational companies focusing on defining practitioner ways of applying HR principle within the business concept. Creating business-led projects by the UN and ILO for global businesses initiate on human rights that aims to bring more companies in emerging markets into the dialogue of human rights in business. Expanding companies' global strategy on conducting a human rights gap analysis of all of the global policies, which results in an update of our human rights training. Participating in assessment as part of an international labor organization and international organization of employers project to provide guidance for companies on how to help eliminate unethical work practices and mistreated labor in their operation and thoughtful their supply chains. Creating workplace rights policy that is guided by international human rights principles, including the United Nations Declaration of Human Resources and International Labour Organization Declaration of Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work. The policy have to provide a concept approach to workplace rights worldwide.
Secondly, how can we reduce contemporary slavery internationally? As mentioned earlier in our video, the main problems that occur in the employment world are retention of passports and identity documents so that the worker cannot leave or prove her or his identity and status, withholding of wages or excessive wage reductions that violate previously made agreements, threat of condemnation to the authorities where the worker has an irregular immigration status, as well as shocking standards of accommodation. The third question is how can we support its victims? We can reduce modern-day slavery in employment, but we cannot end it. Globally, the International Labour Organization, one of the United Nations specialized agencies, plays a key role in enforcing international standards and protection against slavery and assisting victims of slavery through initiatives like International Programme on the Elimination of Child Labour. Another United Nations initiative is the Global Programme against Trafficking in Human Beings. More and more organizations are also working to combat and prevent trafficking and sexual servitude. La Strada works through Central and Eastern Europe to prevent trafficking and assist victims of sexual servitude. Non-governmental organizations like Anti-Slavery International, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch are very active internationally through campaign and monitoring activities.
Last but not least, the multinational companies should work together with the international governmental bodies in implementing their international human resource strategy. The multinational companies should have a clear picture of what is actually going on at the gross level of their operation so that they would be able to identify and prevent the unfair treatment towards their employees.